Out of the blue, I received a letter from my GP offering me an appointment with a psychotherapist at St Charles Hospital in Ladbroke Grove. I was very lucky to be offered some sessions with David. And so, with great expectations, as always, I went along to see David for the first of 6-hour-long sessions in a tall, narrow room at the back of the Victorian St Charles Hospital. To get to the hospital, I had to pass by the Carmelite Monastery in St Charles Square. I'd seen a documentary about the nuns who lived there, and whose lives consisted of prayer, work, and meditation. They maintained silence throughout most of the day and rarely set foot outside. There were hilarious scenes of a couple of nuns attacking an overgrown creeper in the grounds of the monastery, broad smiles, chainsaws in hand. After my disastrous adventures with men, I found myself wondering if the life of a nun might be for me. But I bet it wasn't easy, cooped up in that cold, claustrophobic-looking building, with all those women making sacrifices, knowing that they were stuck there for the rest of their lives. David was tall and stooped with a nervous manner. I followed him into his room and sat down. David took a few minutes to tell me how things would work, how the sessions would run, and gave me a form to fill in. I looked down at the A4 sheet of paper. It had clearly been photocopied a zillion times. At the top it said, "On a scale from 1 to 10, how are you feeling today?" And then a list of questions including, do you feel motivated, interested in doing things? Or, have you had feelings of depression, feeling down, feeling hopeless? Do you have trouble falling asleep? Too much? Not at all? Sometimes? Most days? Every day? I ticked the boxes. Have you ever felt you would be better off dead? Gosh. Actually, there were days when I felt suicidal, but it was rare and usually triggered by specific disappointments, leading me to dwell on the negative side of things. I handed it back to David, who skimmed through the answers as he spoke. Keeping a diary of moods is important while you're seeing me. That way we can monitor how you are and can keep a record of how things are progressing, what changes are taking place. Finally, he looked up. What would you like to talk about today, Kay? What's going on in your life right now? I'd been composed, workmanlike, filling in the form, but now, given the opportunity to share my feelings, I burst into tears. Poor guy had no idea what had hit him. Out it poured, all the mess, my past, my childhood, relationships with men, endless hard work and sheer frustration with life. He looked as if he'd been blasted by a 100-mile-an-hour gale-force wind. But as I went on, he stopped moving about in his chair and started listening intently. Occasionally he would interrupt with a question. Then off I'd go again. I don't understand why someone could treat me this way. Are some men completely stupid and insensitive? The hour flew by. The box of paper hankies gradually emptied, and my eyes felt red and sore with all the dabbing at my cheeks and blowing my nose. Finally, with me still mid-flow, ranting and sobbing, David interrupted. Well, I'm sorry that we're now out of time today, Kay. Lots to do, I think. I stopped dead. I was so embarrassed. What was it all about? And had that outburst helped? The session was over. I thanked him and left the building, empty, depleted. I had brain dumped my life on David, poor soul. At the first cafe I came to, I went in and ordered a cup of tea. As I finished it, I realised that I felt better, less gloomy. The following week, I was back there again. So, tell me about the men in your life, Kay. I never felt I had any say. Right from a very young age, it was always the men who called the shots. They weren't around much, but it was the men who made the decisions, had the power, held the purse strings, and kept you in your place. And if they had to ignore you, it didn't matter. It was just the way it was. I had escaped this fate, running away to London, setting up home in another world where you had freedom, a chance to express yourself and grow, not just at work, but at home too. My ex was perfectly happy with me calling the shots. In fact, it often suited him. I liked to do the driving, and he was fine about that. He preferred navigating. He did have to leave me for work in Hong Kong. I encouraged him for his career, but it was nearly 2 lonely years without him. He came back as he knew it was better for us. He did have some things that were important to him, and I learned from him. He always liked to do the right thing by people. He was traditional and decent. He understood the value of being loyal to others and would never treat people badly. He behaved with kindness, not just towards friends and family, but everyone, even in business. Sometimes it didn't pay off, but he'd simply say, as my father would always say, it's better to be done than to do. And yet, here was Mr. Egypt, bringing it all back, the ill treatment, the lack of concern, the marginalising. He wasn't there much, and just picked me up and dropped me whenever it suited him. I soon felt unimportant, like he could take me or leave me depending on his whim. I had no power. It was obviously easy for him to disappear when it suited. It was then that I realised who Mr. Egypt reminded me of, the male figures in my childhood. My grandfather, for example, he had no time for me. It was all about the boys. Then there was my father. I'd always longed for my father to be there, but he was away so much of the time, and I had to wait my turn for his attention when he was home. He and Mum had catching up to do. They needed time together, time with their friends, their lively, smoky parties, elegant clothes, cocktails, black magic chocolates, wheeling in the trolley with the hot savouries and sandwiches with crusts carefully removed. I'd help Mum with the cheese cubes and pineapple triangles on cocktail sticks. It was fun, but there was little time with Dad. What time he did have seemed to be reserved for my brother, or shared between us. My brother was pushed and encouraged at school because he was a boy. But even my beloved brother could make me feel inadequate. I remember the panic, feeling vulnerable, as he climbed on top and tried to smother me with a pillow. I was going to die. I couldn't breathe. "Get off! Get off!" I could hear him laughing as he pinned me down and pushed the pillow over me again. Mr. Egypt, this distant figure who I'd fallen for, dedicated to his work, often absent, was another version of the male figures in my childhood. Did your mother see it this way too? Did you discuss it? No, never. I look back and think that Mum and I were, in some ways, both scrapping over the crumbs. We knew our places in the hierarchy, and mine was at the bottom of the food chain. And in my experience, women don't really help each other out as much as they should, as much as they can. We might be sisters, but there's some fundamental position that's hard to shake off, whereby we're right back in the cave, all the women grouped together, tending the home, fighting over the small things in our confined, restricted world, and worse, fighting over the men and our position in the pecking order. It's quite astonishing how such things have persisted over millions of years without real change. We're back in the Stone Age. Anyway, that's how I feel with this man. It's raw, it's infuriating, and I can't move on. I'm pinned down and being smothered by the pillow again. My 6 sessions with David were tough, but we did uncover possible reasons for my anxiety, that I would need to deal with in future. 6 sessions weren't enough. But it's never enough, is it?